Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dennis Digital Lab. If you watched the previous video, then you already know what we are working on. We started building our MAC address changer, and in episode 2, I showed you how to change a MAC address manually using the terminal. We worked with if config, brought our network interface down, changed the MAC address, and then brought the interface back up again. But in this episode, we are taking things a step further, okay? So what I did was I downloaded a PyCharm file. Here is it, the PyCharm 2026.1.1. Here is the file, okay? So what I did was I opened a new terminal and I navigated to these downloads, changed the directory to the downloads folder. Here is it. So the first command I ran was this. So what I did was I did -x setf followed by the file name. Here is it, okay? I just auto completed using the tab key and then I extracted the file, okay? So I just hit enter and then it will create, you see here, it will extract the file from this side. So let's wait for it to finish. So as you can see, it is finished over here. So what I do is I'll move it to my OPT directory. Okay, this directory is a recommended place for installing temporary files, like files you've installed from other places, okay? So what I'll do is this, I'll use sudo env, that is env stands for move to move which file. I'm moving the new file first. Let's see what we have. So we are moving this file here to the OPT directory, okay? Yes, so we do sudo because we need super user privilege, then we do env, then PyCharm, and then we are moving it to /opt, okay? Hit enter, it's my password, and then it executed without any issue. So when I do list again, you see you can't see this file again. This file is gone. So when I open, you see it is gone over here. Yes, so now when I change directory to /opt now, clear the screen list, you see now here is it. Here is the PyCharm and we are in the OPT directory. So when you come to Kali, go back again. This is the directory we are talking about, the OPT directory. As you can see, here is it. Yeah, so when anytime you want to install any other tool from GitHub or any other place, I recommend that you install them at this place, okay? What I'll do is I'll enter that directory list. I'll go to my bin directory, clear the screen list again, and then I'll run the command /PyCharm, enter. So you see PyCharm has started. So hit confirm, continue, don't send. Let's wait for it to load, okay? So instead of sitting in the terminal every time and typing those commands manually, we are going to teach Python to do this for us, okay? And don't worry if you have a little to no Python experience, we are going to build this from scratch, okay? I'm not going to give you a finished program and tell you to copy and paste. No, we are going to write the code together, and as we write each line, I'm going to explain exactly what the line is doing, okay? So by the end of this episode, you will not only have the beginning of our MAC address changer, but also understand one of the most useful concepts when you are using Python for cybersecurity and automation, okay? Using Python to execute operating system commands. All right, let's get into it. So let's go back to the slides, okay? So before we start writing any Python, let's quickly remember where we stopped in the previous episode, okay? As you can see on the slide, we changed our MAC address manually directly from the terminal. We open the terminal. So let's go to Kali and let me show you how we did it. Just a quick recap. Okay, so what we did was this. So let's do if config, and as you can see, I said we'll be using the ETHU because that's what everyone will have, okay? Yes, so we are going to change the MAC address and look at the MAC address well. So what I'll do is I'll clear the screen. I'll do sudo. I want to be a super user because I don't like typing there. sudo all the time. So let's clear it. So I'll do if config eta0 down. You see it has executed without any issue. And then we do if config eta0 hw ether, and then we set it to the one we like 003333333333. Okay, yes, so we are setting it to this. I hit enter, and the last command if config eta0 up. Let's do if config again, and as you can see, it has been changed. So I'll clear the screen. Okay, so let's go back to the slides again. So we open the terminal, we work directly with Kali Linux shell command by command. Okay, we use if config as I showed you, brought the network interface down before making any changes. We set a new hardware address, then brought the interface back up again. Okay, so everything worked perfectly, but there's one problem. Okay, if you are doing this repeatedly, typing the same 3 or 4 commands every single time, it gets very old. We have to remember the commands, we have to type them correctly, and one small mistake can cause the whole process to fail. And if you want to reuse this process somewhere else or automate it, manually typing command isn't exactly the best approach. So that's the problem we'll be solving today. Okay, we are going to teach Python to run our Linux command for us. Okay, think about what we did in episode 2. We were sitting at a computer and we were typing the command. This time we are going to replace ourselves with Python. Instead of us and terminal and then command, we want Python, terminal, and then command. Okay, yes, so that's what we are doing here. So, and we are going to build the whole thing from scratch, no copy and paste. We are going to write every line ourselves, and we will explain what each part means. And this is also how I want you to learn programming throughout this series. We are going to learn by doing. We are not going to spend hours learning random Python concepts and then try to figure out where they are useful. We are going to introduce a concept when we actually need it. And by the end of today's episode, we are going to have a working Python program that can execute Linux command for us. So let's start with the first question. So what does our program need to do? Let's stop here for a second and think like programmers. Before you write a code, you need to understand what you are trying to make the computer do. Okay, in episode 2, I was able to change the MAC address manually. So if we are going to make Python do the same thing, what does our program actually need? Well, it needs one very important ability. It needs to be able to execute system commands on the operating system. It needs to be able to execute commands on the operating system. Think about what you are doing right now when you are using the terminal. You type a command, you press enter, and Linux execute that command. We want Python to be able to do the same thing. So instead of us sitting at the terminal and manually typing the commands, we want our Python program to execute those commands for us. And luckily, we don't have to build that functionality ourselves. Now, if you've never worked with Python modules before, don't worry, we will take it step by step. A module is basically a collection of functionalities that we can use inside our Python program. The subprocess gives Python the ability to start and communicate with processes running on the operating system. One important thing to understand here is that this isn't only for Linux. If you are running Python on Windows, you can use subprocess to execute Windows commands. If you are running Python on Mac OS, you can execute Mac OS commands, okay? And if you are running Python on Linux, you can execute Linux commands. But for this particular project, we are working on Kali Linux. So the command we are going to send through Python will be Linux commands. And they are the same commands we were typing manually in episode 2, the if config and the IP address commands, okay? So we are basically taking what we already know and connecting it to Python. Now, before we actually start coding, there's another programming skill I want you to understand. Okay, so that leads us to the next slide. Okay, so learn to read documentation. And this is something I really want you to pay attention to. When you are learning programming, you don't want to depend on memorizing everything. You want to learn how to find information and understand documentation. Every major Python module has documentation. The documentation tells you what the module does, what functions are available, what arguments those functions accept, and how they are supposed to be used. And this is important because no course is ever going to teach you every Python module that exists. It is impossible. You might be using Python for cybersecurity. Yes, someone else might be using it for data analysis. Another person might be using it for artificial intelligence. Someone else might be building websites or automating tasks. All of these areas use different modules. So instead of trying to memorize every single module, you want to develop this habit. Find the module, read the documentation, understand what it does, experiment with it, and actually use it in your project. At the beginning, documentation can look confusing, but trust me, as you become more experienced with programming, you will get much better at reading it and figuring out what you need. And that is a skill that will help you far beyond this particular project. So as you can see on the slide, this is the environment we are going to be working with. We are using Kali Linux as our operating system. And for the editor, I'm using PyCharm. First, let me create a desktop entry first. Go to Tools, Desktop Entry, so that anytime I click on this icon, I can simply open PyCharm. Okay, so let's create a desktop entry right here. As you can see, desktop entry has been created. So when I come to this side, I type PyCharm, and as you can see, you see it here now. Yeah, can simply drag it, put it here, so that's create a launcher. So anytime I click on it, it will just open for me. Okay, create new projects from Kali. Okay, create it over here, create. Let's wait for it to load. Okay, so it has finished loading. So right here, let me increase this screen size again. Last one, last one to it. Okay, hope you can see it now. So I'll right click here, go to new directory, and I'll create it mark changer, hit enter. I've created that directory. I'll right click, create new in a Python file, call it mark changer, and hit enter. Let's close this, and now we have the Python file right here, Python file called markchanger.py. okay, the first thing I'm going to add is our shebang. Okay, so the shebang is the pound sign or the hash sign, and then we do user /bin /env and then Python 3. Okay, so if you want to see which Python version, let's open a terminal, and then I'll just type Python 3 -- version, and as you can see, I'm using this version of Python 3.30.2. okay, so that's the Python version I'm using. So what this shebang is actually doing is, this basically tells Linux that the file is intended to be executed using Python 3. okay, yes. Now the first actual Python statement we are going to write is, we are going to import that module I spoke about. So we do import subprocess. okay, and since we are using the PyCharm ID, it keeps giving us a hint because of the AI added to it. But we are not going to depend on the AI. We need to understand the code so that when AI is helping us, we actually know what AI is doing. And if it is doing something out of place, we can actually correct it. Okay, and this is our first important Python concept. We are importing a module. We are calling Python, I want to use a subprocess module in this program. So now Python knows that we are going to be using functionalities from subprocess, and now we can actually use it. Okay, so now let's go to back to the slides. Now look at the actual commands we are going to use here. On the slide, you can see subprocess.call, if config, shell equals true. Now this might look one complicated line when you are seeing it for the first time, okay, but it's actually made up of 4 simple pieces. Let's break it down. First, we have subprocess. Okay, that is the module we are using. Then we have .call. Okay, That's the function we are calling from that module. Okay. And then we have ifconfig. And that is simply the Linux command we want Python to execute. The one we were doing manually. Yes, now we want the .call function to execute the ifconfig command for us. And finally, we have the shell equals true. Okay, this tells Python to execute the command through the system shell. Okay, so when you put everything together, we have subprocess.call ifconfig shell equals true. We are essentially telling Python, use the subprocess module, call the call function, and execute ifconfig command through the system shell. That's what this means in plain English. When you see this, that's what it's saying in plain English. We are calling the module and then the function, and then we are telling it to execute ifconfig command through the system shell. Okay, and that is it. Now let's put this into our actual program. So let's go back to Kali and then let's write a program. Okay, so we do subprocess.call, open a bracket, we put the ifconfig here, ifconfig, and then followed by comma shell equal to true. Okay, that is our code. Okay, very simple, but let's actually see if it works. I'm going to save the file and now I'm going to run the program. So let me save it, Control S to save it, Control S, and then let me open the terminal and write as sudo clear it, and then let's go to that directory where we have this program. So we go to, here is the cd into PyCharm. Here is the PyCharm project. I'll just do PyCharm projects. We will list again, change to PyCharm project again, list, and here is the project we created. So let's change directory into it, clear the screen again, list, and here is the program PyCharm. Okay, so when you cut this, you see the command here is it. This is the same command here. Okay, so to run it, we just do Python 3, then followed by the name MAC address changer. When you execute, you see we've executed the command. You see it has listed the ifconfig command. It's just like retyping ifconfig here. You see we get the same command. You see this one we call the Python 3 MAC changer.py. The code we just wrote. You see ifconfig is inside, same as this ifconfig we type right here. Python has executed ifconfig for us. We didn't manually type ifconfig into the terminal. Our Python program executed it, and we get the same information that we would normally get if we had typed the command ourselves. And this is the foundation of what we are building. Okay, as we can see, we only have a few lines of code. That is the shebang, and then we are imported the subprocess, and then we called subprocess.call ifconfig shell equals true. But even though it is small, we have already built something useful. The first line tells the system we are using Python 3. Okay, the second line imports our subprocess module, and the third line actually executes the Linux command. So Python runs ifconfig for us and gives us the output, and that's exactly what we wanted. Okay, so in the next slides, the manual versus Python automation. Okay, so let's compare what we were doing before with what we are doing now. Before, we had to open the terminal, then type ifconfig ourselves and press enter, read the output, and if we needed to do it again, we repeated the entire process. Now look at what happened with Python. We simply ran macchanger.py, our Python program called subprocess.call, subprocess executes ifconfig, and then output appears. No need for us to manually type the command every single time. And this is the whole idea behind automation. We are taking a process that we would normally perform manually and getting the computer to perform it for us. And this is where programming becomes really useful in cybersecurity. We are not just learning Python because someone told us that Python is important. We are learning it because you can use it to automate things you would otherwise have to do it manually. Alright, let's quickly recap what we have accomplished in this episode. First, we created our macchanger.py file inside the macchanger project. Then we imported the subprocess module. After that, we use subprocess.call, okay, to execute a command on the operating system, and the command we tested was ifconfig. We also introduced shell equals true, and most importantly, we practice something that is going to be extremely useful as you continue learning Python: reading documentation instead of trying to memorize everything. And finally, we got a working result. We were able to execute a Linux command entirely from our Python program. So at this point, we have built the engine that we are going to use for the actual MAC address changer, but we are not quite there yet, because right now our program can execute ifconfig. That is great, but we want it to actually automate the commands we used in episode 2, and that is exactly where we are going next. Okay, so in episode 4, we are going to take everything we've built here and turn it into an actual MAC address changer. We are going to combine our Python code with exact ifconfig steps we learned in episode 2, and once we get that working, we are going to take it one step further. We are going to move away from ifconfig and update the program to use IP command, which is the modern standard on Linux. So we are going from manual to Python automation and eventually a proper Python MAC address changer using the modern Linux IP command. And that's where we are headed. I'm Dennis from Dennis Digital Lab. If you are following this series, make sure to stay with me because we are building this from the ground up, one concept at a time. I will see you in episode 4.